probably say, because I'm clearly not a millennial myself, so I'm probably of the generation where, look,
young at heart.
absolutely young at heart and constant learner as well, right? Because you have to keep pace and so on. But I think the difference when I think of when I started my career years ago to the people that I actually interact with and try and engage with, I think the instant recognition piece is the biggest piece, and I think the transparency and I think the visibility or the recognition of why they're working is it's a lot wider. Because I mean, when I think back, when I went back my first job, right, it was a job. My parents didn't see anything else. It was just get a job and get money coming in and so on, right? I think the thoughts are different now. I mean, some of the candidates that I meet with now, I'd love to have, but it's their choice. They actually don't want some of us sometimes. And I don't think, at that point in time years ago, we maybe had as much choice. And I think the other piece that resonates for me when I talk to millennials or when they're looking at, they actually are not looking for a career, long-term career. They're looking at opportunities to build their skills and always building on their skills, which then has, for Singtel, made us think, how do we engage with this individual and keep them engaged for a longer period of time than say the every 1 or 2 year jump to pick up new skills. And it's not seen as a bad thing. Like when I was working years ago, it's seen as a bad thing, you're a job hopper. It's not seen as a bad thing, it's actually seen as a positive because you're building on your skills and that's your personal career, right? So I think that's where, organizations like ourselves are just saying, well, how do we increase the internal mobility piece to keep them engaged in new jobs every 1 or 2 years so that they don't see that exit me because they're still building new skills within the organization.
Tricia, yourself.
My turn, is it? I should really ask you because you're the millennial one. I don't know why you're asking this.
Sure.
I guess I find this question very curious because the reality is in my generation. I mean, there was just a lot of change as well as there is now. I think the difference is the rate of change. So if I think about it, I have come from, a time when people write letters to now writing WhatsApps or, people ride a boat to ride an airplane to now, there's the low-cost airlines which is available to everyone. So there's just a lot of transformation that's happened within my own generation. And it's no different to what millennials are going through right now. The only difference would be probably the speed of change in which that they need to cope with, the fact that it's done differently, a lot more offline rather than online. I find it very curious how they can have the ability to be present yet be absent as well at the same time. And I think these are all necessary in order to be relevant in this new world. But the reality is, I think the essence, the values of human beings and employees are the same. It's just the rate of change and the pace of change and knowledge, right? Skills have a bit of a 2.5-year relevance. I read something like this. If you don't have learning agility, which youngsters do have now, then you're actually not relevant. So I think they have a high rate of learning.
What then would you consider as one of the bigger challenges in terms of hiring a millennial from Unilever's standpoint?
So for me, I think it would be instant gratification. So you mentioned this a little bit. So the fact that they really want to be recognized on the basis of potential. And as we know, potential does take a bit of time to prove. Right? So, they want the next job, they want it fast, they want immediate acknowledgement of their contribution, which is great. But at the same time, there's no proof of concept. So they're a little bit on the impatient side. And so how do you kind of manage that? You kind of get it. Like, I'm not a parent, but many parents raise their children to expect the best quickly for themselves. And so yeah, that's what they're manifesting in the workforce. So it's just managing that expectation.
I guess from Singtel's perspective as well, you hire a wide range of talents, millennials, Gen X, baby boomers and all. Is it an obvious difference? And what kind of challenges do you at Singtel face on this topic?
Well, we obviously try and standardize certain things, but you can't. So we do have specific needs. So looking at, it's not based on age, to be honest. It's probably based on skills. Okay, but I think the ways we engage with the different types of ages is quite different. So the engagement with the millennials is probably through a lot more social media, talent community programs, their outreach, and expecting that you're not going to get them as a candidate or someone that you're going to attract immediately. That's the build of the relationship, and that's the biggest also probably difference where, you know, they want to trial with you and actually want to experiment and actually probably want to do things sometimes for free because they actually want to understand the culture more rather than I just want a job because I'm actually trying to build skills, and they're willing to work for free. Okay, I think the other piece that I see quite a difference of with the millennials is also I think they want to know what the company stands for. I mean, not so much just the culture, but corporate citizenship and what do you actually do outside of the job and what do you actually do outside of work, because they can work anytime, anywhere. They don't need to come into the expectations that they're not in the job 9 to 5, right? Which is my age, right? They work for, yeah, they don't need to be in the office. They probably even are more. They would probably work better out of the office and they do more hours, right? And I think for them it's actually, you know, now the interviews, like years ago, the interviews would be more like, what would I be getting out of this job? What's my career progression? Now the questions around when they ask, it's, well, what do you stand for? What CSR work do you do? I mean, what do you give back to the community? What are you doing in terms of enhancing? If I want to run my own business, how are you going to help me provide my skills? Can I do funding? Those are the type of questions that they're being asked now, which shows a very different mindset because you can already tell a lot of them are very entrepreneurial, and this is a stepping stone, which is great because then the alumni pool is great because you're actually helping them and do seeding ideas to get them to go out and be entrepreneurial. So that's our mindset in Singtel, because not everybody is going to be an employee, but is a client, right? So that's the mindset we work with.
Does it mean to a certain extent your hiring processes are a little bit different as well for different age ranges?
Yes, we do. So I mean, we've been experimenting with a lot of innovation. We work with vendors. It's come to the point sometimes maybe you don't even need to meet the individual, right? You do video stuff, you do gamification things, and you can talk to anybody around the world anytime. Sometimes you don't even need to meet the person, and you know, you've got them, or they're interested in offer. So for a non-millennial person like myself, it'd probably be, I want to meet up with you, I want to see whether I gel with you. It's a little bit different.
Celine, correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe Circles.Life hire quite a handful of millennials.
Yes, you're right. Again, this morning when I was doing my prep, I did a kind of a check on the percentage, and I think we have about 80% of millennial in our Singapore office right now, and maybe another like 6 or 7% of Gen Z. So I wouldn't say that we have a specific process for hiring millennial. I think there's always a challenge in hiring talented people. And you have to be authentic and be, you know, transparent with them about what they can expect when they get into the workforce. I think that's what people look for nowadays. It's really interesting, and I want to build on the point that both of my panelists has mentioned about the instant gratification point of, you know, millennial wanting to get feedback, right? So I had a conversation recently with one of the new hires, and he had been with the company for 3 weeks, and you know, he was like really interested in, so how do you think I'm doing? I've been here for 3 weeks, you know, it's and so yeah. So,
is that wrong?
No. So but then, you know, the feedback cycle is really short now, right? For us, you can't rely on a yearly review anymore. So we do have 6 months review in the company to make sure that, you know, goals can be revised and, you know, frank conversation that we had with people. But at the same time, what I try to do and what I encourage the other managers of the company to do is to have monthly check-in with people to just like understand from them what are they enjoying about their job, what are they not enjoying, and what can we do to help to like improve the situation for them. Because people are not going to hang around for 3-4 months if they don't like what they're doing.
That's quite interesting. So when I first put up on social media saying that I'm going to be hosting this panel, a few of my friends actually sent me a message saying, "Oh, this is going to be really interesting. I want to find out more." And it's a mix of both millennials themselves and everyone else. So, noting that there's this perception among hiring managers, do you think there's also a misconception of hiring millennials?
Yes and no. I think a lot of time people also, don't really, they're not very clear on the definition of what it is. I've heard of a strawberry generation, right, and people labeling them as such, and like they don't work hard and stuff like that, which I don't believe is true. I think people nowadays
Just wanted to be very clear about what is expected of them, and then if they really believe in the vision of what you're trying to build, you give them clear feedback in terms of the direction of like what they need to improve on. They're willing to put in the hours, and they're really passionate about what they do.
Okay, that's fair. Now we'll move on a little bit into attracting millennials itself, and I know all three companies have spent a lot of time and effort with regards to attracting millennials. As a start to Sharon first, what kind of hiring practices do you guys undertake in terms of attracting millennials? What has worked, and if you could share even what has not worked, that would really help us here.
We sandbox a lot of ideas. Okay, so I think for me, I'm always interested in innovation. Okay, so I'm always interested in meeting up with new vendors, and I love proof of concept, and I love being the first one because then you tailor make things, right? So we sandbox a lot of ideas. Some actually don't make it. So proof of concept, shelf, work on next one. I think what we've probably been doing, probably in the last sort of 12 to 24 months and been experimenting with is everyone does this video interviewing, right? But I think we've taken video interviewing to the next step where we're actually doing artificial intelligence with video interviewing and looking at facial expression and eyes and the words that they use, which is a context to them. Are they going to be a good hire in terms of what they're looking at? I think the other thing that we're engaging in now, a lot of gamification. So the gamification is not games just for pure games, but it's gamification based again on machine learning and AI. So that's interesting to the millennials because it's a game. It's something they're interested in looking at, little puzzles and so on, but it's a scoring system. But for us, because it's machine learning, it's constantly telling us this is good, this is not good, potentially, right? In its easiest form. That was difficult actually for hiring managers to believe in a tool that was going to do that because they all they're non-millennials, right? We talk about hiring managers and a lot of them actually feel, I still want to meet the person in person, right? And I'm not sure I want to trust the system and so on. So from a change management project standpoint, it's been a little bit of let's do both and let's see how we go. And then after 6 months, proof of concept into the success and the roles and how they do. And then you actually look at how they've done from a work perspective. But we do pulse surveys and pulse things to say how you're feeling, and that's been a big one for us as well because it was an organization that did the yearly 6 months reviews. We don't do that anymore. We do it every 2 years, and we do pulse surveys every month, right, or every 3 months. That's kind of where I'm thinking I'll go. I probably want to, you can talk to me a little bit more because the two vendors that we're working on at the moment is probably not even in this region yet. So I kind of don't want to say too much. We're still proof of concept with one of them, but if what they say is going to work, then it's going to be hellish exciting, right?
Nice. Tricia?
Yeah, so we can share. So attraction. One of the insights, as we all know, is that everyone's attention span is getting shorter, including millennials. So one of the things we do is we bring, for example, the QR technology to universities, and that's how we talk about careers. So you swipe your QR, and then it will say, "Hi, Tricia, we understand you're interested in a career in marketing. Here's what it would look like in a 30-second video. You'll actually understand what your personalized career in marketing would be, or finance, or HR, etc. So that's one way of using tech, and it's super interesting for the millennials. Of course, I serve them Ben and Jerry's as well while they're watching the video, so that kind of helps whatever age you are. The other thing we do is gamification and AI. So I do work with, I should say, the vendor, so Biometrics as well as HireView. So we have been doing this for about 2 years now. It is still for the millennials as opposed to for the mid-career recruits. And what we do is about 30, 60, 90-second games, and it measures different traits that are important to my company. So for example, level of trust, level of risk-taking, appetite for agility, this kind of things. And it's super fun. So if you do it, there's no right or wrong answer. It will just tell me whether you would fit in with the culture that I have. In terms of the digital interview, it is indeed AI, so it does measure level of nervousness, perspiration, but also obviously the words and the answers to the questions is 3 questions. I myself was very doubtful because I'm not a millennial, and I thought, how can this AI, know what to look for? And the reality is, on year 1, it was not so successful because, as we know, AI just gets smarter the more you use it. right? So it couldn't understand Asian accents, etc. So I did have to double run a bit. But I must say that using this kind of technology has doubled the interest in Unilever in terms of application rates. So overnight, it doubled in terms of people wanting to come and join my company. So I thought that's really amazing.
Interesting. You, on the topic of you going to universities, that's to a certain extent employer branding. Is this something which Unilever works on as well, or has a strong focus on?
Yes, absolutely. So the number one HR metric, at least, that our shareholders look for is employer branding. And the reason that's important is because the stronger your employer brand, the higher correlation to the top applicants to come to our company, right? So I personally believe that you can copy brands, you can copy process, you can copy systems. The one thing that is the competitive advantage in the company is the people. And therefore, building the employer brand is very important because it is the brand that is, we have brands like Ben & Jerry's, Magnum, which are huge. But the reality is the biggest brand is the Unilever brand because it's behind the backs of all our packaging, it's on all our adverts, it's our lead endorser for sustainability. And if people know about Unilever, then the more they know about it, then the more access we have to the best talent. And that will be our competitive advantage.
That's interesting. Singtel, Sharon, anything that Singtel primarily focuses on when they look into employer branding?
Are we talking about the grads or just in general?
In general.
Okay, so I'll talk about the grads one first because it was similar. We go out in Singapore purely really for a branding exercise. Do we run workshops and so on? We do, but I'd just like to say that in Optus we actually don't. And we did this 2 years ago. We actually don't go out to campus anymore, and we actually took quite a different view because the Optus brand, and we actually went through a refresh of the brand, and it was a lot more exciting. And then we go with the tagline Optus, yes, whatever you want to do, yes, you can do it, right? And you create your future was our tagline. When we go out and hire university students, we don't go on campus anymore. We basically say, you want an interest in Optus, and we take them at year 2, and we basically say, if you get your degree, you have a job with us. We have the numbers. That was a big leap of faith, and the leap of faith really was, as long as you have the passion and the interest, we'll take you, and we'll make a career for you. So that's been extremely important for us. Singtel probably not quite there yet. We're still a little bit more traditional, but from an employer branding standpoint, I think we're dialing up the brand of we're not telco anymore. So our external brand is, yes, that's our traditional and we are telco, but the type of skills that we've been going for in the market now have really been around data analytics, cybersecurity, IoT, Internet of Skills, of technology skills and so on, and that is not telco. And that's also changed for us from an employee branding standpoint that my talent pool is now no longer just technology and telco people. I go after people from the banks, FMCG, all over, right? Sales and marketing. Because for us, it's now just the talent pool and the skills are so diverse and come build with us an opportunity. Not so much a career, but an opportunity and leverage that we can learn together.
Interesting you spoke about Optus there, where you took a leap of faith to hire people with passion. This brings me to a really interesting point. I've spoken to quite a number of hiring managers and they come to me saying that, I want to make sure I find someone with 2 fits, culture fit as well as job fit. What kind of qualities do you look out for though? Passion is passion. I could be really interested in technology for an example, but how do you further define such qualities, or how do you seek for these qualities in now let's go specifically to millennials?
So we put them through some of the gamification and online tests. Yeah, we actually sometimes also put them through assessment centers. We actually see how they perform. Not much a case study, but I think what we've done is we've actually probably come up with 3 scenarios in a customer type environment, and whether they actually have the ability to manage customer queries and so on. The other one that we're experimenting with is an online customer test, right? Where you have scenarios and how would you address some of the issues that come up and how would you show that care and concern and a passion for what you're doing rather than, okay, please go to this link and look at that, okay, stuff like that. So it's the reliability of the answers and how they answer and how they interact with us that shows that. Is it 100%? Absolutely not, right? I mean, you just still have to go with sometimes you have some hires that you think, okay, didn't quite make the mark and what you do, but in the last 2 years, it's been really a big winner for us because from a branding perspective, on campus, it's seen as if you get a job with Optus, it's a big wow, right? Because they bought into you. And we get our numbers straight away. We don't have to go through the whole periphery of 3 months of assessments and offer letters and so on. It's all done and dusted. And then the engagement starts there. How do you actually engage with them from second year? They come in, they do things with our shop on their retail, they actually go out, they wear Optus t-shirts because they're already seen as part of Optus still while they're learning and still studying. So that engagement is upfront with them straight away and it really seems to be quite powerful.
Interesting. Celine, yourself, because you generally hire a lot of millennials, 80% of them, what kind of key qualities do you look out for when you hire for these people?
So I think being a startup and things always change. I mean, maybe your job 6 months from now can be very different from what it is today. One of the things definitely we are looking for is drive. Or I'm not sure if you are familiar with the concept of grit from Angela Duckworth. I think it's more about, sorry.
Could you share?
I think it's really talking about perseverance and not giving up on specific goals that you said that you want to accomplish, right? Because that applies to every other aspect in your life as well, and you can test them in terms of maybe they were in university and they were pursuing something, and how long to pursue it, and what were some of the challenges that they face, and did they give up on it, and really drilling down on those aspects to really test for how they would react in a real life environment. When sometimes it can be frustrating when you work for a startup, like you work really hard on something for a week, and then after that the direction change, and then you have to be able to go with it, right? I think it's there's no right or wrong, and being coming from a psychologist's point of view, I don't think that there's a silver bullet that would help you to just point out who has the most drive. And it is sometimes a leap of faith that you have to take with somebody. But I do think that you look for general values in them that is aligned with your own company values. Like for us, it's about being open-minded. Are you willing to also recognize that you have an area to improve on, and nobody knows everything. And also, are you willing to also voice out when you think that someone in a more senior position is having an idea that not necessarily would be the best for the customers or for the products, right? I think so. Open-mindedness and really willing to learn from the feedback, willing to learn from their experience are some of the things that we really look for.
Okay. Well, I think it's a two-way thing, right? From a talent standpoint, I wanted to work in a company, and a company wanted to hire someone. How do you allow the culture, the people, the environment to welcome and engage such talents to come into the space? I like to think that yours is a little bit more simpler because you have the majority of them being millennials. But if you could start off first, that would be interesting.
Right. So I think for us, my panelist has talked a lot about application of AI and other technology, and being a smaller company, we don't necessarily have all of those resources, but what we do have is the agility to just go out and try different things. So there's this whole spirit of experimentation. One of our values is just about be bold and dare to try. So we tested out interview chatbot, and in the past we've also tested out scheduling bot to reduce interview scheduling time, and this can be as simple as something that we found on Product Hunt, and then we decided to try out among the team in HR and see if they work or if they don't, right, and then iterate from there. But really, when it comes to interviewing for culture, I very much caution against using one assessment test because I think there's a human aspect to it, and there's a lot of context behind why somebody might give a certain answer. Maybe there's a story behind them, and you want to understand them and where they're coming from. So our marketing team actually do this thing where they have sort of what you would call an airport test, and a consulting firm has something asking themselves do I want to spend 3 hours in the airport with this person, because they do travel a lot, right? So for us, it's also like, is this somebody that I enjoy hanging out with outside of work? And it's funny that I have one of our marketing managers sitting, PR manager in the audience, and she had been put through like an airport test with the other colleagues, and they really asked her about like what was the biggest risk that you had taken in your professional life, personal life, and what did you learn from the experience, asking her about her interests, and all these things kind of help us to formulate who she is as a person, and just not like a combination of skills.
Singtel, Sharon, could you share a little bit more? So you were laughing a little bit just now, and I'm quite curious to understand how
I'd love all my hiring managers to think like that. We're probably a little bit more traditional, to be honest. I think it's a constant, I wouldn't call it a challenge, it's actually getting easier. It's an education path, right? It's actually saying to them, because you have to understand the Singtel population are not millennials. It's actually quite the opposite. So you're trying to educate a group of people to say you want to engage with these millennials, and they're a little bit different, okay? And then they go, oh, they're special. No, they're not special, they're just different, right? But that's the term that they use. So I think for us, it's also the education and then constant piece for me to say, it's a chat. It's not an interview, right? 3 days a chat. You're getting to know the individual, right? It's like dating, right? You want to date before you marry, or you want to buy, or you try before you buy. And they all like, oh, okay. So it's a chat. Have a chat with this individual. To that point, would you want them in your team? And would he want to be in your team? Because if he chats with you, he doesn't like you, even if you want him, he ain't gonna buy, right? So treat it as a chat. It's also a leap of faith, right? I mean, sometimes, you make decisions, and sometimes make decisions that aren't the right one. It's a leap of faith. And in that moment, where you have all the tools, and then you actually have that chat, you make a decision. But it's actually the engagement with the individual that actually capitalizes on the relationship, and that's where you catch them from the engagement standpoint, and that for me is the most important piece. Because I fundamentally, look at me, right? I'm in HR, I didn't train in HR. But I obviously had a passion and a need, and someone saw something in me and gave me an opportunity and let me go, right? So that's my belief in sometimes telling hiring managers that their essence is there, and then it's up to you to help them in that transition and help them grow, but you need to pick up that piece and just say, can you make that raw material work? It works sometimes, it doesn't work all the time, but it's a constant, it's a constant education for us because we're a little bit different.
Tricia, anything to add on?
Yeah, so in Unilever, look, there's pipe and structure in terms of how we try and help onboard people, whether you're a millennial or not. It's the same structure. But the reality is that, so what's the structure? So we have onboarding programs for management trainees. You sit together for a week and we take you through the whole business design and meet a lot of leaders, etc. You get buddies. One thing we actually do as well is reverse mentoring. So, for example, we do have a mix of workforces. 60% are millennials, but the rest are not. And so we do have a lot of reverse mentoring going on as well. So you put in a bit of structure so that people know how to navigate across the organization and the culture. But then I guess the strongest piece of onboarding is our own culture itself, and the fact that we also do just have chats. So we don't actually have an assessment center. We call it a discovery center. And over that one day, you basically have coaching conversations with people. And it is not about assessing you necessarily in terms of your skills. Everyone who applies is great because obviously they've been through the AI and they've been through everything else, but it's really a development conversation to see whether what they're looking for is what we're looking for and whether that fits.
Interesting. So now you have culture, which is present, I'm sure, in an organization. Do you communicate this culture on social media? Is this a mean or a way that you use to be able to connect together with millennials?
I mean, I guess you could. I mean, and at the end of the day, how do you communicate culture in social media, right? It is about the tonality of the voice that you use. But the reality is, whatever you put out there, whether it's social media or physically, when you speak to candidates, it is about the experience that they get, and it needs to reflect the reality of my organization. Right. So yeah, what is Unilever's culture? It's actually very creative, dynamic, innovative, energizing. There's a lot of intelligent people who are willing to share everything they know. It's very supportive. It is not hierarchical at all. It's casual. I had to wear proper clothes because it said business attire, business casual. Usually I wear torn jeans and things. So no, genuinely I do. And we do communicate it out there, but it's more in terms of making sure that what we communicate out there is who we are. Because
We've spoken about AI, and I believe that Singtel as well as Unilever is very active in that. I would just want to ask whether there were any trends that you see coming in. You shared that there were 2 special POC projects that you guys were working on. Any hints that we could potentially be taking note of?
Sure. I won't give the name because if it fails, then you don't want to give them negative publicity. But a new one that we're trialing and actually going into building an integration phase now is a sourcing tool. And most of you will say, well, we have sourcing tools. This one will actually replace people. So I won't actually have a recruiter that looks at 100 resumes and decides who to meet and so on. This tool will do it for me. So it's machine learning, and it will actually say, okay, out of the 100 resumes, based on what I want, it will rank, and it will source globally for me because it picks up from job boards and everything. So Wanted Lead could be an interesting one. It then looks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have to put in the plug. And then we will then actually look at ranking based on what we were looking for, and basically then say to the hiring manager, these are the 5 that you need to meet. You don't need to meet anyone else. So that's one that we're going for, and we probably will go live in September. Other pieces of things that we're looking at for is obviously the engagement tools and on your culture and so on in social media. I think it's authenticity of actually how we actually communicate the culture, because you can talk about it, but I think the authenticity in saying, look, at Singtel, HQ is here, so it's not taking instructions from Europe or the States and so on. HQ is here, so if you want to be taking part in the career that's actually going to be making decisions here, then it's quite a different mentality, right? And how do we actually show that culture? Because it's what we do, it's how we live our life. And I think that education piece into the line managers is, be authentic, not everything works. Be honest, because when they come in and they find out this was not what they thought it was, then we have a negative experience, right? So the pros and cons, and just be authentic.
Celine, any trends you see coming in? You did a master's in psychology, so I like to think that you could be a bit more people-driven rather than AI. But feel free to share.
No, I think other than what I've previously mentioned, I think for us the focus would be more toward automation. Like how do we use automation to lighten the workload for our recruiters so that they can really focusing on connection and providing a good experience for candidates. And I think to the point about like candidates nowadays as well as new hires who are millennial really want feedback. So every step of the way throughout the process of interviews and things like that, making sure that they get the feedback that they need without our recruiters doing a lot of administrative work is something that we're trying to focus on. So we're still like a long way from using AI and stuff like that to really do that.
Okay, we've spoken for almost 40 minutes now. And before we go into Q&A, I just got one last question for the 3 of you here. What's the best recruiting advice you've ever received in terms of hiring millennials? If there was just one big takeaway for them to really go ahead with or go home with. Celine, do you want to start off one?
My quick answer would, I would say empathy is something that is really important, because even if it's easy to just treat them as a group and generalize, but they are individual with their, every single one of them will have their own aspiration, things that they're passionate about, and have an idea of how they want to build your career. And of course, the more authentic and the more empathetic you can be about that conversation and telling them what they would get out of their experience working with the company would help in the long run in terms of not just getting them on board but also retaining them and developing them.
Sharon?
I have a different twist actually, not to yours, but I have a different twist. I don't think it's any different engaging and hiring millennials than it is for anyone else. Because I think for me, it's always a chat session, whether you are in your 40s or 30s or your 20s or whatever. I think the relevancy and the honesty and integrity that you bring into that chat session. And I always say, I mean, especially when I'm talking to senior candidates or even more junior candidates, I said, I appreciate it's a leap of faith, right? I mean, I'm telling you all this, and whether you're buying into it, it's a leap of faith. And I think if you can show that empathy, and not everyone will take an offer, not everyone will come and join, but it doesn't matter because they've had the experience of coming in and having a chat with us, which is a lot more powerful. Make it a positive one, because that to me is the brand promise of why you engage and why you actually experience the Singtel brand, right? And the other piece is also just say, you know what doesn't come around this time doesn't mean that it's not going to come around next time. And so, hence we start to build these community chats and community experiences, because if it's not as a candidate, it's engaging with you, as I said, a product and client. So that's probably my takeaway.
Tricia?
Yes, so I agree with you. So I don't think there's a difference in terms of what recruitment advice to give regardless of the generation. But the best advice is really to be human. So I think we talk a lot about technology, and I think it's of course very important to remain relevant. But at the same time, there's a role that technology plays and there's a role that humanity plays. And really having a balance of both creativity, innovation, kindness, compassion, empathy, all these things robots cannot do, digital cannot do. So there's no way I'm going to bring in someone to my organization nor would you want to join an organization that doesn't show you those human traits. And so I think you need a blended approach between technology and humanity.
Okay, thank you. We'll now have the Q&A. How do I switch the... Right, so go to pigeonhole.at, just use your mobile and put in the questions. The passcode is hiring, Hiring. I just realized I should have shown this to you guys even before the bell started. Sure. While you go on to Pigeonhole and put in your questions, I do have some personal questions that I can start asking. Sharon first. How do you juggle your life, work, and keep up with the latest human resource trends?
Okay, so most people see, because as I said, I spend my time between Australia and Singapore, right? So I'm in Singapore 2 weeks of every 5 weeks. I'm in Australia 3 weeks of every 5 weeks, and in that 3 week span, I'm 2 weeks in Melbourne and 1 week in Sydney. So people say, what the heck, right? I love what I do. I love meeting people, I love my team, and I love what I do. So I think that's the passion that keeps me going, okay? I also love reading. I keep up to date with reading, and I get, TED Talks and webcasts and so on. And, being in the airports also, you see lots of new books coming out, business books, and you pick them up and you read, and because I'm being on planes, I have lots of time to read. But from a personal standpoint, Teddy, my little my dog, okay, he's the love of my life. So I do things when I'm home in Melbourne. So Melbourne is home because that's where Teddy lives, right? So Teddy, my baby, is my go-to from a personal standpoint, and a lot of friends that we meet in the dog park, a lot of professional people, and they give me ideas on all kinds of stuff when they hear I'm with Optus or Singtel. They give me lots of feedback sometimes, a lot of ideas of what we should be doing, and that keeps me going in terms of looking at different things.
Nice. Tricia?
So I believe in living my life, and work is just part of that life. And if I didn't live an integrated life between, offline and online at work, then I wouldn't be the okay professional, I guess, that I am. So I live an integrated life. So I shared earlier, I do yoga. I love yoga. I love talking to people, in particular coaching them. So I studied this during my personal time. I love just the savviness of digital marketing. So I'm doing all this in my personal time, but I bring it into work as well. So, to run the well-being stuff at work, sometimes I teach a yoga class. I teach, I could do meditation to a group this size. I did it for 300 people in Unilever recently. I share my passions in and out of work, and I live an integrated life. And that's the only way I can be successful and I can be happy. And when I'm happy, it shows in my work and it shows in my life.
Celine?
For me, I think the way that technology has enabled us to not having to carry around our laptop is great. So I love the G Suite. I no longer have to bring my laptop around, and can access my phone and things like that, which helps. Part of it. And I think, how do I keep up with the latest trend? I'm an avid listener of Audible. I love audiobooks, and I try to listen on the train when I'm working. That's how I keep up. But I don't always just listen to like HR related book. I mean, it can be anything. It can be novel. It can be psychology. Anything that I'm interested in. So that's also what keeps me sane, because you feel like you're always learning something new every day, and you can do it while you're commuting. So that's
Okay. So we've got quite a few questions here. It's quite a game. People are trying to push this up. First question in 14 votes. How would you encourage millennials to stay in the company? I specifically want to ask Tricia this. Tricia, you've been in Unilever since 1992.
Yeah. You have to reveal my age by speaking. Okay, look, to be honest, how do you encourage millennials to stay in the company? I wouldn't. They need to want to stay, right? And I, as the head of HR, I would create a culture that's vibrant and relevant to my business. And if that sits well with you, I would think that I hopefully did a great recruitment process and that you fit in. But quite frankly, if that doesn't work for you, I would be even more delighted if you found the right space for yourself. Yeah.
Okay.
You look speechless.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see. The question says just jumping about, and I'm not sure whether people are very engaged by this gamification tool itself. Perhaps a lot of millennials here, yeah? The second question, is it necessary to call us millennials? Are we creating a divide? I think this is a really, really good point. Sharon, do you want to take this question?
So I think my views are, no, I don't think we should be dividing, right? I mean, we term it because we think we have to come up with different scenarios of how we deal with different people. But as I said, we're all kind of the same, right? It's just what we're looking for and how the engagement is on. So I would probably, personally, no, not necessary to call it millennials. But saying that though, I think people in the 50s, my age, okay, if we're keeping relevant and so on, compared to, say, my nephew who is like 20, it is different, right? So there are different things that you do, but I don't think you need to classify that it's a Gen X, it's a Gen Y, it's a millennial, it's a Z, and so on and so forth. It's just pace of change and what comes with it, right? That's my personal view.
Anyone has something to add on to that question? If not, I'll move on.
I'm just looking at the data.
I just don't think it's necessary at all. I know, I was just thinking that, I mean, it's no different to consumer marketing where you segment your target audience. So you just need to classify people to different stages, and millennials happens to be one stage. And so the way you speak to them, the way you speak to a different target audience just remains, it's the same concept as doing marketing. But, are we creating a divide? No. Are we just creating relevance? Yes.
I'm just going to go on to the next question as well. This is a bit more to sell for Wantedly. What's the best platform for hiring millennials? Besides Wantedly, of course, I personally am a fan of active hiring. That means not just using a platform, but actively going into different channels, whether it's events, whether it's in social media to look for talents. But if we could just answer the question based on these two, a bit more on a platform and a bit more on an active side. Celine, perhaps you want to answer this?
Well, it's difficult to pick. There are so many out there. I think one platform that we've tried to use recently is AngelList. Yep. And I mean, just because the nature of us looking for people who are more entrepreneurial, so we've gotten some success with it.
Okay, Sharon?
There's one, I'm sure they're in Singapore, it's called Indeed.com. That's one that we quite like to use. We use that in Optus quite a bit. There's another one, we actually don't probably, it's not so much platforms or job boards. I mean, I'm looking at apps and so on. So I think you have an app here also called Labor Me. In Australia, it's actually called AirTasker. So I just got onto it only recently, I'd say recently, about a year ago, because AirTasker, I was looking for a painter, right? And someone said, go on AirTasker. And then when I went on this app, it was like for anything. It can be, someone that does digital marketing and so on. And it's an opportunity to just engage with the workforce that really doesn't want to be with a company. They just want to build on their skills. And then how do you turn those opportunities of talking to someone to actually convert them into a potential candidate? So we're exploring something like that.
Okay. I'll move on to the next question for Tricia. How are you able to extract meaningful data of personality from candidates more than just resumes and skill sets? Quite a handful or mouthful, but yeah.
I guess it would be in the qualitative segment of the application, meaning there are some essay questions that you do ask. So that would, where's the question? It now moved. Yeah, so it would be in the qualitative segment of the interviews, but also in the conversation itself, right? And this is the thing. So many applicants come, practice, and memorize, and they don't actually show their authentic self, and it takes a really, really long time to get to their authentic self, and that's just very frustrating, and I basically don't hire people who've memorized everything they have to say, because I can't figure out if they fit or not. Yeah, so be authentic.
Okay.
Sorry, can I add a little bit to that? And I know we shouldn't say this because everyone tells me you never go with your gut, right? You shouldn't go with your gut. But years ago when I was in professional services firm, someone actually said to me, you've come to the stage in your life where sometimes when you meet someone, you go with your gut after 15 or 20 minutes. And sometimes you actually go with your gut. I've done that, right? And as a recruiter or as an HR professional, you should, because you go through the process and so on. But I've had instances where I've had someone that gives me all the classic examples and the answers of what you read textbook answers, and you think, I'm not so sure. And then someone else who's fumbling along because they're so damn nervous and they don't know what to say, and you feel that there's something there, and you just feel like telling the person, just calm down, you're okay, just calm down and just show me yourself. And and the few instances that I've taken a leap of faith in giving those guys a chance, they have been wonders, right, in the organization. And sometimes it says, go with your gut.
On the topic of giving a chance here, the one with 9 votes, as a startup, what is the most effective way to approach you as a HR manager with a new HR tech product? I think there are many people here who also try and sell to you. But of course, I think moving deeper to this question is, what do you look out for instead of just someone who is here to give you flowers with the name card, or also how or what would attract you to work with a new solution from a HR perspective, of course. Anyone?
Okay, let me try to see how I can add to this conversation. I tend to ask candidates actually, like what are some of the new platforms that they're using, especially like maybe college graduates, and see where they hang out, and yeah, what have they recently signed up for?
Okay, interesting. Sharon, you had something to jump in on?
I like innovation. So I love sandpitting and sandbox ideas. So anything that's new, I love, right? So if that's a pitch of someone to come and say, Sharon, I've got something interesting. And I've actually had some doozies, right? And you think, oh, this is never going to fly. And then sometimes you meet such an interesting person. The product is not great, but you think, okay, such an interesting person, so passionate about them, and you give them ideas of what you can do in terms of improving the product. But I think I'm always looking for innovation. So even how big or how small, I don't go for big ones, I go for small ones because I think they're more creative and a lot more agile. And then being able to be a platform for them to be able to take further and be successful, what a wow.
Okay, be prepared for a long queue outside with the interesting people here. Yes. Tricia, you mentioned that you're an executive coach, right? And this question of how do you coach millennials? We actually ran an event yesterday as well with regards to UI UX design, and one of the topics that came about, or one of the questions that came about was, how can you mentor junior talents?
So coaching and mentoring is totally different, right? So mentoring is basically giving you advice based on an expert topic that I have, and that's easy to do, right? So I could easily mentor young graduates, millennials, because I'm an expert in my company, in my industry, etc., etc. And so you talk to them regularly and you tell them what to do and what's happened, what's worked in the past. But coaching is totally different. Coaching, how do you coach anyone, not just millennials? It's about understanding what result that individual wants, right? And then just helping the person arrive at their own relevant answer to them for solving that problem, or to get that to that result. I would not tell you what to do because it's much more powerful if you came up with it yourself. And so there's a guided way in which I would coach you towards that outcome. Yeah.
Okay. I think we'll go on to one final question. This specifically is about Sharon's name here. You mentioned about millennials liking transparency. I know you also use AI. Is this something that you communicate to these talents?
Yes, we do. So first phase was really just pure video interviewing, and then the second phase of what we actually did from an experimental standpoint is the AI. And yes, we were very clear because they can actually do trial runs and experimentation, and we were told that just do this. But yes, we're very clear that we are picking up for linkages to things that are just pure video interviewing. So they do know that.
Okay, Celine, Tricia? The same question.
I don't understand the AI because they're not doing AI.
Right.
I am doing AI, but I don't understand the question.
Yeah, they know that they're doing AI.
So you don't need to say, right?
Is that the question?
The question is this being communicated to talents that they are being studied in and out?
Yeah, because they have to record themselves. So what happens is you get the link, and then it says here's your digital interview, and then you answer the questions based on the link, and they know it's AI.
So it's quite interesting though for us to see 8 votes here, because potentially it means that some of these people out there who could have been put through this may not have had, this experience.
Possibly.
Therefore, that's why I thought it was.
Yeah, because SCAT is just a chat.
Or maybe we just
record.
Yeah, that's a video interview as opposed to an AI.
Okay, there are really a lot of questions, and we really can go till tomorrow or one whole degree certification on these things. But I'm going to end the panel here. Thank you so much, the 3 panelists. Please put a round of applause for them. If any of you want to speak together with them or try and be interesting, they'll be more than happy to listen to you, I like to believe.